Hello, my name's Tom Walker. Welcome to this podcast, which I'm recording on behalf of the Focus Employment Hub, which is based in St Helens. With me is John Perry, who's the Hub's Managing Director. And just before you hear my conversation with John Perry, if you want to find out more, you can either phone John on 07860 802 867, that's 07860 802 867, or email focusemploymenthub@gmail.com.
My name is John Perry. I run a company called Focus Employment. We provide training and support for disabled people, providing emotional and practical support. I am a blind person. I also have hydrocephalus and spina bifida, and I went to special school, and I've also been in mainstream education. I've worked in the private and voluntary sector for many years providing support.
Tell me about the company you run, John.
Essentially, Focus Employment is a social enterprise, so we attract funding from lottery and the council and a range of other sources. We do charge for some of the services, and we cover areas like counselling, life coaching, advocacy, and provide support around employment issues for disabled people.
Now, we're recording this, of course, during the coronavirus outbreak, but if we weren't in the middle of that pandemic, how would you normally provide services?
Before the virus was identified, we initially did everything face-to-face, but obviously now we've got to accept the government guidelines and work within that. So we're now having to deliver everything via social media, via the phone, FaceTime, WhatsApp, and a range of other methods, Zoom, etc. That's not ideal for me as a person, because I feel I'm more of a people person, and ideally you want to build up a relationship with people face to face. And I think the sort of people that we are trying to support, there's an element of trust, so you have to build up a trust relationship with them. I think it's slightly more difficult doing it this way, but it's the way that we have to work now.
Tell me about those services and the kind of people you see who use those services.
The way I kind of sort of see myself is providing support for disabled people who may be covered by the Equality Act, or indeed people who may have identified themselves as being disabled. So essentially, I don't limit myself, for example, to say seeing blind people. So it's anybody with a long-term health condition or disability that we provide support for. I alluded to earlier on that we provide counselling. So again, we would offer counselling to people or for people. We look at providing employment support, so that can be anything from helping them to find work, voluntary work, paid work, etc. Or it could even be things like trying to keep them employment. So for example, we've got one guy at the moment who's in employment but struggling with employment and dealing with his employer in that way. We've also people helped set up their own businesses, get into voluntary work. I'm also working with a person at the moment who's trying to set up as a self-employed musician, so we're trying to do that at the moment. So it's a range of things, really. The advocacy side of things might be representing people at appeals for benefits, going to doctor's surgeries, all of those sort of things. So we do advocacy around that sort of thing as well. But that's like just some examples.
From a geographical perspective then, where do you cover? Where are you based?
We're based in St Helens, and obviously when we were doing the face-to-face stuff, I guess most people would come to us from St Helens. However, in one sense, the way we're working now allows us to cover a wider area. So essentially, we can potentially cover locally and nationally now because of the ways we're working at the moment.
How has the company progressed since you set it up?
I think initially we were working with primarily disabled people, but we're now offering support for migrants, and some of the services are available to the whole community. So we're kind of diversifying into other areas in working with the whole community as well.
And although you work with a diverse range of people, you do have some underlying principles that guide the way you work. Tell us about those.
My overall aim is to promote or kind of do practical things that are kind of going to involve people socially and economically in the community. And so that's the long-term objective, if you like. And I can well see now with the virus that there's going to be even a greater impact on disabled people and the wider community in terms of engaging with people, getting involved with employment, losing jobs, all of those sort of things. And so from that perspective, I'm trying to work on those sort of issues as well.
You mentioned there the virus and the impact it could have on disabled people. What would your concerns be, and what do you think the solutions are?
The first bit is, whilst I recognised over the years that things have improved for the lives of disabled people in terms of employment and technology and so on and so forth, I envisage now that whilst it's true to say the wider community will start to lose their jobs, there's going to be a major impact on disabled people either not being able to get into work or losing their jobs, and that will, have an impact upon that. One of the direct things that we're trying to explore as I don't have all the answers, to be honest with you, in terms of how we might address these issues, but I think it needs to be more tailored or made, and we're going to have to be fleet of foot and be a bit more flexible in how we deliver support and services for and on behalf of disabled people. But one of the practical ways I'm trying to explore at the moment is to see whether focus employment can start to create employment, self-employment and business opportunities where we directly take people from day one to train and support them, and then provide business and employment opportunities at the end of that time, if that makes sense.
You've also recently started working with migrants. From what you've seen so far, what challenges are they facing?
Well, the biggest challenge, to be honest with you, I think is partly the fear factor. It's difficult to kind of work with migrants in a sense, because I think that they fear about what they might encounter if they kind of start to talk about their issues and things like that as well. But also, I think the community have got a bit of a misunderstanding about the impact of migrants on the community, and that creates tensions. So when I talk to a lot of other organisations as well, they're finding it difficult to support migrants, and I think we're not alone in that issue as well.
Where does the passion for all this work come from then, John? Why are you so interested in this? Why don't you just, I don't know, sit at home and do nothing, or just do a regular 9-to-5 job? Where does the passion come from?
I do nothing person really. I think I like to be involved in doing things anyway, and I've been involved in a range of things over the years in a paid and voluntary capacity. So I've always been doing something. But I think what sparked me was I did an O-level many years ago, probably in the 80s, around welfare rights. And I think my project was around supporting people with a visual impairment into employment. And I think that's what sparked me at the time, because the unemployment rate at the time was quite poor for visually impaired people. And you can have a debate about whether things have improved a lot or not. But essentially, I've been driven by that because I've worked in the private and voluntary sector supporting disabled people around all of those sort of issues now since then. So I think that's what kind of spurs me on. I think also it can be quite challenging, the work, and I kind of enjoy a challenge. So I think I like that sort of thing as well. But there's another side of it where, once, like we talked about getting people into employment or self-employment or creating business, that's kind of like a nice thing to see, to take people from one step to the next stage, and then the outcome is they've achieved their personal and professional goal kind of thing. So I think that spurs me on as well.
Are there any people, without going into too much detail, obviously, are there any people you look at and think, yeah, I've really helped with their lives, I've moved them forward, they've made progression?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true to say of a few people, but and when I alluded to the fact that earlier on that we were helping people into business, we have one person who started off with me when I was working in an employed capacity, and then we've stayed with her ever since. And she's now doing quite a lot of self-employed and running her own business and stuff like that as well. And so that's one person I can think of. The other person I was talking to you about, the self-employed musician, he's always sort of said to me, I've spurred him on and things like that as well. So that in itself has made me feel quite good about that. And so it's all those little, they can be little steps, but they can be major for people, if you understand what I mean. And that's kind of what makes you feel really good about this sort of thing,
And a real sense of personal satisfaction when you see that person making strides in their life.
That's correct. And then, even with, say, for example, we've helped people with access to work, and they've struggled to get access to work, which is a government scheme that provides support for disabled people to get equipment and support through work and self-employment. Even when you see things like that, you kind of think, oh, that's really great. Or, you talk to people about We provide stuff on benefits. We do stuff around PIP and various support and stuff like that as well. When you see people who've maybe been turned down for benefits, and then you help them get that benefit, or you help them get through the appeal. We've had people like that as well. So it's all of those sort of things really that kind of drive you on. And even the advocacy side, kind of representing people and supporting people in employment or attending GP surgeries or whatever, you can see that that's helping them as well.
What are your future plans for Focus Employment?
Yeah, well, I think everybody's aware now that funding is going to be tight. So we're always looking for new ways of maybe providing or looking for funding or attracting funding from various elements and stuff like that. But from a point of view, I made reference to the idea about social and economic inclusion. We're looking now to maybe develop services that will bring in an income that we can invest back into the company. We're also looking at the possibility of setting up an online newspaper and radio station, and also activities that might involve getting involved in the community with people and stuff like that. So we're looking at all of those sort of issues at the moment.
And who do you work with when you're developing those initiatives? How do they come about?
Joking aside, a lot of my ideas come to me when I'm in bed, but I kind of sort of think about it in bed, and then I'll bounce it off. Jane's invaluable as my PA and support, and she provides some of the services to the company. I also speak to other individuals and organisations to see what they think about it as well. I'm also quite keen to form alliances and partnerships when and where appropriate. If people want to do that, I'm happy to do that, whether that be on an informal basis or a formal basis. Because obviously, and I say this, I've got a bit of a party line when I see the individuals I'm supporting is, I don't know everything, but I might know a man and woman who does, and I've got to observe that in my life as well. I can't possibly be all things to everybody, and I can't deliver everything myself. The ideal scenario would be to achieve a level of funding where we can kind of employ people directly. But if we can't do that, we're going to look at the possibility of self-employment. There's also something called permitted work, which allows people to claim benefit and work at the same time. So again, if people wanted to talk to me about that, we can explore ways that could happen as well.
The big question then, 5 years' time, where do you see Focus Employment being? What will you be doing?
I always remember one of the pots of money I went for ages ago was the guy asked me, he said, so why do you want this money? Do you want to change your own backyard or change the world? And I said, change my own backyard, And when we left the interview room, he said to me, I won't say what he actually said to me because it was a swear word, but he said, you're a lying person. He said, you want to change the world, yeah? Now, essentially, even if I can make a difference in my own backyard, that is what I want to do. My overall aim is to provide social and economic inclusion, and the way of doing this might be to provide employment and self-employment opportunities and business opportunities. But also, I want to see the day where disabled people and others can work alongside each other and live, work and play alongside each other. So that's my overall aim.
John Perry, thanks very much indeed. And if you want to find out more about the work John does, you can do so online at www.focusemployment.co.uk.